Hey guys, what is up? What is up? Carter here. I'm enjoying some delicious coffee this morning. Black. That's how I like it. Not so much that I really enjoy the taste that much. You know, a little creamer or maybe, I don't know. I haven't decided if it's just pure laziness because I can just pour it and go. You know, usually when I'm getting ready for work, I just have a little travel thing and I just fill it up with black coffee and I take off. So I don't know if it's totally convenience or if I just prefer the taste. I don't really like a lot of sugary stuff, especially in the morning, so maybe it is the taste. Anyways, enough about coffee. That's not why I'm doing this video. This video is actually being shot kind of in a week of work hiatus, I guess. So I'm starting my new job next week. This week, I basically have no work at all. Most of my business is actually out of town this week. It's kind of a funny story, but I won't go into that. But needless to say, yeah, you know, I've been popping into the office here and there to do a few things, but mostly I've had it off, so it's been very, very cool. And one thing that I've done, and one thing that I've noticed is I've been carrying this Para 2 because I've just been carrying it, and I've been doing my usage tests and things like that on it. And then I got this new SNG in the mail, which I did a video on, and I kind of realized that there's, you know, some similarities here, and figured it would be kind of cool to do a comparison video between the two. You know, obviously there's a lot of differences, but there's some similarities too. So let's take a look at how close they are together. First off, before I forget, let's talk about weight, because I have the numbers in my head, and if I keep talking too much, I'll forget about weight. So let's get that out of the way. Believe it or not, for such a thick knife with a thick stock of steel and, you know, titanium frame lock and whatnot, they're not that far off. The SNG comes in at about 4.4 ounces. The Paramilitary is, I think, 3.8 ounces, so just under 4. So just a little bit over a half an ounce difference between the two. And I gotta tell you, if you're actually just trying to feel the weight, it feels pretty dang close. You kind of go back and forth between saying this one's a little heavier or they're pretty much the same. So it's surprisingly very similar in weight. First, you'll notice that overall size, you know, overall length is about the same. And that's kind of what first caught my attention, is the overall length is almost exactly the same. The Para 2, let's see if I can kind of get this. The handle on the Para 2 is just ever so slightly longer, but it's really just barely even noticeable. As far as total length down to here and here, they're almost exactly the same. Thing that I think, well, okay, first off, let's get the elephant out of the room, right? You know, they may be kind of similar in shape and size and weight, but this is obviously a frame lock, titanium frame lock. This is a compression lock. So there's a huge difference right there. But that's really the only huge difference between the two. Everything else is kind of small. They both use thumb holes. This uses the Strider oval thumb hole. This uses the Spyderco round thumb hole. The Strider pivot is much, much larger. In fact, the Spyderco pivot's about as big as the negative hole that's in the Strider bold pivot. Carry is about the same. You might get just a tad bit more of this showing out than this one, if you look at where the actual clips kind of would allow. So yeah, the Strider will peak just a tad bit more. The clip on the Spyderco is a little bit longer, and some of this, guys, this is the first time I've compared the two. I kind of did a first glance to see if there was enough to do a video on, and then I just ran with it. So yeah. Materials: G10. This one happens to be OD green, which kind of is quite similar to the Digicam. Coating, they both are coated blades. This one has the tiger stripe, so it's been kind of bead blasted off, whereas this is the complete DLC. I don't know if you can hear the jets outside, but I live next to a Air Force base, so I get that a lot. Probably the most remarkable thing is the blades. If you can see, the sweeping of the actual cutting edge is very, very similar. The blade length is quite similar. It's funny is the one of the things that Spyderco takes a hit on is their blade length to handle length ratio, and you can definitely see that here. The handle length on the Spyderco is longer than the Strider, and yet the blade length is actually a tad bit shorter than the Strider, which yeah, it's kind of interesting. So this one utilizes kind of that a lot more, and I will admit that is one negative, kind of. I mean, it doesn't bother me, but it is kind of interesting how on the militaries especially, they don't really utilize all that handle space. You can see that the tip actually ends about right here, and so they could easily drop this in a little bit more or engineer it so that you get a little more. There is quite a bit of chunk, like all this could actually in theory go away. You know, it's just there for the lanyard hole. But cutting length, that is pretty interesting there, because the Strider has a very large choil, but because of the slightly longer length there, cutting length is pretty similar. I mean, the Para 2 has more, but not much more. In fact, I was very surprised. It's like less, well, about 1/4 inch, I guess. Yeah, about maybe a little bit more than a 1/4 inch. I was very surprised. I was expecting the Para 2 to have quite a bit more cutting length than the Strider, and it's actually not that far off. And also when you consider the fact that, you know, really right next to where this, what are these called? The ricasso? Is that what they are? No, I guess it would just be the choil. I don't know. It's been a while since I looked up the official knife terms there, so excuse that, guys. But really, I mean, this cutting length right here is pretty much not really usable, because, you know, this is going to kind of prevent you from really getting in there effectively. Whereas the Strider, you've got this nice kind of sharpening groove here that acts as the close stop for the knife. So even though this one's technically a little bit longer, as far as actual usability of blade length, I would say they're the same, because, you know, what length, the 1/4 inch this is longer, really isn't that, I mean, you can't really do much cutting in this corner in here. So there's probably about a 1/4 inch here that you really can't use all that effectively. So I'd say they're about the same. Blade stock, you know, obviously Strider is thicker, and it has a thicker tip, not by a ton, especially this grind. The 3/4 grind they do and the Tonto obviously have a much thicker tip, but this it's not quite a full flat grind, it's just a high flat grind, but I consider it close enough. I mean, it starts right here and then it's just flat all the way down. You've got just a little tiny bit up at the top. That's another similarity. They're both basically full flat grind. You know, like I said, this one technically not, but pretty dang close. So yeah, I found that quite interesting, the similarities between the Spyderco Paramilitary 2 and the Strider SNG. I could go more at length in terms of kind of like reviewing. I would say that this is just a more solid knife. There is, you know, absolutely no flex at all in this, mainly due to the, you know, the solid construction with the backspacer and the G10, and then the thick titanium, the bigger pivot, thicker blade stock. So this one is a sturdier knife. I mean, whether or not that's necessary in use is an entirely different story, but this one is a more solid constructed knife. You know, there's no flex. You know, there's two ways you can get blade play, right? There's flex, and then there's actual blade play. Blade play is when there's a gap and the blade kind of, you know, moves around. And then there's flex, and that's where if you just put force on it, the stock is thin enough, you know, the construction is weak enough that you can actually just kind of bend everything. You know, this frame can kind of give a little bit, blade can give a little bit. So this knife has flex. It is lighter, but it does have flex. You know, and like I said, whether or not that actually means anything, that's a totally different story. You know, some people like things that are really solid. Some people are like, unless there's a real point to it, who cares? Strider definitely has a more solid feel to it than the Para 2. But yeah, anyway, so I'll end this here. I was just surprised at how, you know, blade shape, especially with the cutting sweep, cutting length and blade size. I was surprised at how close these two knives actually are to each other, and how really they could be used for pretty much the same application. You know, this one's a little bit thicker stock, but it's not that much thicker to the point where it would probably slice just about as good as the Para 2, but give you a little bit more strength in case that's something you're concerned about. Alright guys, take it easy. Have a good weekend or week or whenever this video makes it up. I'll finish enjoying my coffee, check out some YouTube videos. Catch you guys later.